Hi, this is Stuart Haynes, one of the section editors for the textbook Pharmacotherapy, a Pathophysiological Approach, a text published by McGraw-Hill. And McGraw-Hill has asked me to do a series of brief tutorials on the AccessEdit system, which is their content management system to update chapters. I've logged into AccessEdit here as an author, and today we're going to be talking about how to update references. That's how to change references, how to add a reference, and how to delete a reference. So I've been working on this chapter on nausea and vomiting, and I'm in this section about the 5-HT3 receptor antagonists, and I've made a few revisions. I've added some statements, and I've noticed that this reference here, number 1, is to an old edition of Harrison's Principles of Internal Medicine, and I'd like to update that reference. So if I click on the reference and try to update it, I'm going to do a right click here and manage the citation. You'll notice it opens up a dialog box where it has all the references that are in my chapter. So these are all the references. And reference number 1 is this chapter, which appears in Harrison's Principle of Internal Medicine, but it says the 19th edition from 2014. And I know there's a more recent edition of the textbook that has been published. I want to continue to reference that chapter, but I want to update this reference. But notice there's really no way to update this. I mean, I can update the numbering. Actually, I can't do that either. So the only way to update a reference that exists within your bibliography is actually to go down to your references, your reference list, and right click in the reference list over that reference. So we're going to edit this reference. And a few things about this particular chapter. I'm going to go over to the chapter itself, and you can see that it's still authored by William Hassler. So that hasn't changed. But the editors of the textbook have changed, at least in their order, a little bit. So this is the 20th edition of Harrison's Principles of Internal Medicine, and now Larry Jameson is the lead editor, and Dennis Casper has moved to the 3rd position. So I just need to update this. I'm going to put Casper here, and so I've updated the editors, and now I want to update the book title, which is now the 20th edition. The location is the same, the publisher is the same. The publication date is now 2018, and the external link is still the same. So we're going to update this. Now it's telling me that some of the mandatory fields have not been updated. And what I noticed is that there are little red asterisks here to indicate fields that are required. And if you notice, volume and first page are supposedly required. However, I know that this is not true, that these are not required fields for a book chapter, and so I'm going to ignore this. So we're going to save it anyways. And it's updated the reference with the proper names of the editors and to the proper edition and the proper year. So we've now updated that reference in our bibliography. Now we're going to go back, and I want to now add a new reference to my bibliography. So this particular statement right here, I would like to add a reference, and so we're going to click the citation links. Now I could pick something that already exists in my bibliography, but this particular reference is not among those that I've already cited. So I'm going to have to create a new reference. So we do that by clicking this. And so I could add this information to insert this reference. So I could add the author information, the particular journal, when it was published, volume, pages, and so forth. But that'd be a little tedious. So there's a little easier way to do this. So I'm going to go to my reference source. Again, here's all the information about that reference in PubMed. And the easiest thing to do to insert all of this information, the authors, the title, the journal, volume, pages, is to use the PubMed ID. So the PubMed ID, I can copy that. I can go back to AccessEdit, and I can use the PubMed ID to identify this particular publication. So we're going to paste that in here. We're going to click OK, and we're going to validate it. Now once it's validated, it'll insert all the information about that particular reference source into your reference list. It's got the article name, all the names of the authors, the journal that it came from, the volume, first and last page, the issue, the digital object identifier, and the PubMed ID. And so it retrieved all the PubMed data, as we can see, and now we can insert that reference into our chapter. Now it's given a label of 78, and we're going to insert it. Now that may not be in order, and in fact it's not. So our next reference should be something along 18 or 19 here, 17, 18, so it should be 19. So it added it to the end of the list, but it's not in the proper arrangement. So we need to say yes. We want to rearrange these references, and we're going to say yes. And in so doing, it rearranges all the numbers, and we're going to go back to our section here in the treatment section, the HT, and we notice that it renumbered it and made it 19. Now it renumber all the other references in the chapter as well. So that's how we add a new reference and renumber all the references in the chapter. Now I may wish to add another reference with this one that already exists in my bibliography. And to do that, we would manage the citation, and we could pick one from the list of citations that already exist. So I'm going to pick another reference here from my list that I want to include, and so we're going to pick this one, and we're going to update it. So it's going to add that citation with this one, and we're going to say yes, let's update the reference lists. And it may or may not change the numbering here because it probably is the one that appears next in the bibliography. And we're going to go back to our section here and navigate back, and we can see that it has been added to this section here. Now if we wanted to delete a citation, it no longer is correct. The first thing what we need to do is unlink it from the bibliography. Highlight the citation, right click, and unlink the citation. Now the number is not linked to the bibliography any longer, and we can delete that citation. So that's removed from this statement. Now reference 18 is no longer associated with anything in the chapter, and therefore we need to go to the bibliography, our references, and look at reference 18, and now this reference is no longer used anywhere in the chapter. So to delete this reference from our bibliography, we'd need to delete the reference. And when we delete it, it'll ask us, do we want to rearrange the references? And we're going to say yes again. And it should renumber everything. And if we go back here to 5-HT receptor 3 receptor agonist, we should see that everything is renumbered, and it in fact has been. So now goes to 17. The reference we inserted before is now 18, and the one that we added to that is now 19. So in this tutorial we talked about how to add new references to our chapter, ones that are not in our bibliography. We talked about how to add a reference that exists within our bibliography to a statement or to a series of references. We talked about how to delete a reference from a statement and from our bibliography, and we talked about how to renumber the list of citations.